Internet sensation and 20-year-old singer David is now under intense scrutiny after human remains were found in the front trunk of a Tesla registered to him. The victim has been identified as Celeste Rivas Hernandez, and she has been linked to David.
Weeks after the discovery, there's still no neat label, no official story to hold onto. Natural? Accidental? Something darker? No one with a badge is saying. Meanwhile, every new clip, every screenshot, every stray detail makes the situation feel messier by the hour. If you've been scrolling, you know the vibe. Confusion wrapped in silence, silence wrapped in suspicion. And somewhere behind it all is a teenager whose name keeps getting turned into headlines. That's where we start, not with answers, but with a question no one can stop asking. What actually happened, and why does every update make it feel like we're further from the truth? What most people missed about that deferred box is how loud it actually is. It doesn't mean nothing. It means something wasn't simple. The autopsy happened. The basic checks happened. But the examiner didn't lock anything in because specific tests have to finish first: blood chemistry, trace analysis, tissue work that takes time and has to be precise. If the story were straightforward, that line wouldn't exist. Deferred is the system's way of saying, we can't risk getting this wrong. So while timelines and theories spill across the internet like ink, the lab is doing the slow work: numbers, controls, confirmations. It's not the dramatic moment people want. It's not handcuffs and headlines. It's waiting rooms and microscopes. And yet, that's exactly the kind of delay that sets the stage for speculation. Because the longer nothing official is said, the louder unofficial voices start to sound. But this didn't start with the form. It started long before. A teenager who'd been reported missing more than once. A pattern of disappearing and reappearing that everyone interprets differently now. Some call it a cry for help. Others call it proof of chaos around her. The truth is, those early reports mark a pressure building long before the final spark. Each one is a breadcrumb on a path that only looks obvious when you walk it backwards. Teachers noticed mood shifts. Friends noticed sudden distance. Family felt the strain of trying to keep someone close who kept slipping away. And that's the part that complicates everything. When a person has a history of going off the grid, people in power get cautious about declaring what happened this time. It's not an excuse, it's a factor. In these cases, you don't just need a narrative. You need proof that can stand up when a defense attorney starts poking holes in it. Then there's the car, the part everyone keeps coming back to, because it feels like the clue that should make everything click. A Tesla, left in the same spot long enough to draw a ticket, long enough to be towed, long enough to gather a layer of dust so thick it turned into a kind of clock. You don't need timestamps when you can see the stillness baked into the windows. The thought that her body might have been inside through all of that is what freezes people. It suggests a timeline measured not in minutes, but in days. And that stretch, those days when the car sat, when the city moved around it, when people walked by without looking twice, that's where the questions multiply. Who knew where the car was? Who had a key? Who could open it, move it, leave it, ignore it? The registration says one thing. The reality of access says another. Ownership and control aren't always the same thing. That's why investigators care about logins, key fobs, location pings, phone proximity. A car can be someone's on paper and still be a ghost ship in practice. Used, left, reclaimed, abandoned. Which version happened here changes everything. If you're wondering why there weren't immediate arrests the moment the car became the center of the story, look at how these cases fall apart when they're rushed. Prosecutors don't need a headline. They need a sequence they can prove. It's not enough to say who the car belongs to. They have to show who was near it at specific times, who touched what, who left traces where. They need key card records, digital signatures, Bluetooth handshakes, dusty surfaces that tell the truth under a lab light. They need messages pulled from phones that were wiped and then resurrected. Group chats that seemed harmless at the time, but read like roadmaps later. They need to line up witness statements with timestamp video, with the back end of apps that log more than users realize. Every screenshot people share online needs to be authenticated. Every clip has to be tracked to its source. Every claim has to survive a chain of custody challenge. Because if they jump the gun and it doesn't stick, that's not a reset button. That's a door closing forever. What throws gasoline on the fire are the coincidences. The details that don't prove anything on their own, but light up the speculation radar. Matching ink on index fingers. A name that shows up in places where it shouldn't. An unreleased track title that feels too on the nose to be coincidence. Each of these becomes a shard in a mosaic, and the human brain is hardwired to make pictures out of fragments. We connect dots even when there might not be a line. That doesn't mean the dots are meaningless. It means the picture they form is still a sketch. And sketches are dangerous when people are hungry for closure. You can feel that pull when a single photo gets shared thousands of times because someone noticed a wig that mirrors a look or a glance that reads like fear. The mind fills in motive. The internet writes a script. But the next page, the one courts recognize, has to be inked with something else. Real, verifiable, unshakable proof. The public timeline is its own character now. A parking officer marks tires. A ticket gets slapped on a windshield. The tow truck arrives. The impound lot logs the intake. Days stack like boxes in a storage unit, each labeled, each waiting to be opened. And then that date, the one when the discovery is finally made, breaks everything open without actually explaining anything. Somewhere in that stretch, if the speculation is right, she was already gone. Somewhere in there, someone knew more than they said. And somewhere in there, if you believe the alternative theory, other hands moved pieces around, nudging the narrative in the direction that kept certain people safe and others quiet. That last idea is the one that keeps resurfacing. The possibility that not everyone involved was in the same room at the same time, that someone used someone else's property as a shield, that the car became a decoy and a confession all at once. The reason that kind of theory won't die is because threads keep popping that look like they could be part of a larger weave. A teacher recognizing a student in a photo that wasn't supposed to mean anything. A familiar face appearing in more than one place at the wrong times. A phone call to a mother telling her to stop looking, delivered with the casual cruelty of someone who enjoys control. None of those moments proves a conspiracy, but together, they suggest coordination. And coordination means more than one person had the script. If any of that holds up under scrutiny, the silence we're seeing now starts to read differently. Not as stalling, as strategy. Because you don't bring charges against one person if the evidence points to more than one set of fingerprints. You wait, you watch, you pull threads, until the whole thing knots around itself. There's also the meet and greet clip that won't go away. He's in a room full of fans. Conversations happen in quick bursts. Smiles are a currency. And then the camera catches a moment. Someone approaches, someone who looks a little too much like someone else, and the expression changes. The body language shifts, subtle but visible. People freeze frame it and argue in the comments about what it means. Shock, guilt, alarm, paranoia, or nothing at all. Just the internet bending a flinch into a confession. That's the curse of viral crime narratives. Ordinary movements become suspicious under the spotlight. Every glance is evidence. Every outfit is a clue. And yet, because of the larger situation, because of the car, because of the history, those micro moments don't vanish. They stack. They pressure the people in charge to say something before they're ready. And still they don't. Which makes the silence feel like hiding, even when it may be protection of witnesses, of processes, of a case that could shatter if it's jostled too soon. If you zoom out from the clips and posts, the cold realities of building a case look almost boring by comparison. And that's exactly why they're easy to overlook. Lab reports have to be handled by the book. Devices have to be mirrored so the original data is preserved. Geolocation pings have to be tied to actual bodies in motion, not just phones tossed in glove compartments. Rideshare records get subpoenaed. Bank charges build travel trails. Hotel keys become timelines. And then there's the human layer. Interviews that don't line up the first time, people who were friends until they realize the stakes and start changing their stories, a witness who is just enough to be useful and just enough to be scared. Investigators don't push those pieces into place with tweaks. They do it with paperwork and patience. Meanwhile, people on the outside are refreshing for updates and misreading the pause as absence. It isn't. It's the cost of getting it right. The part that keeps scraping at the nerves is how young she was. You can say minor, and it sounds clinical. You can say under the legal age, and it sounds like a statute. But 15 is not a number, it's a life half drawn. That's why the public anger sits at a boil. Because beyond the legal maneuvering and statement writing, there's this simple, devastating reality. A girl lost her future, and the adults who were supposed to be stronger, smarter, kinder didn't keep her safe. Whether that failure was negligence, manipulation, or something that can't be said without a courtroom deciding it. People feel it. They feel it when they see her photos. They feel it when the timeline shows a car sitting in the sun while nobody looked. They feel it when the person at the center of the storm continues to move, to perform, to exist in public, while her family plans a service and tries to breathe again in a world that suddenly won't let them. That's another layer, the public figure at the core. Fame bends reality. It buys time and attention at the same moment it burns both. When someone with a platform is tied to a tragedy, everything splits. Fans go into defense mode. Critics go for the throat. The person in the middle either vanishes or doubles down. And every choice is analyzed for meaning. Did a caption cross a line? Did a repost feel like taunting? Was a lyric a breadcrumb? Or just unfortunate timing? These questions churn because celebrity turns every minor action into a message. People want a clean emotion, remorse, outrage, denial. Instead, they get a muddled stream that can be interpreted in any direction you already believe, which is why these stories feel unsolvable on the internet. The web is designed to reflect your own assumptions back at you, until you mistake that echo for evidence. Underneath the noise, a handful of facts hold steady. The car was found where it was found. The certificate says what it says. The timeline of parking, towing, and discovery exists on paper in city systems that don't care about followers or streams. Those are anchors. Around them swirl the human parts, the friends who think they know what happened, the classmates who whisper about threats and leverage, the family who heard a voice on the phone that told them to stop searching and still doesn't have a name to attach to that voice. If there's a ring around this, if there are accomplices, that voice is the tell. Boldness like that doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from feeling untouchable or from believing that someone else will always take the fall. The scariest version of this story is the one where the truth is simple but unprovable. The version where one person made a set of terrible choices and then got very quiet, and the evidence that would make that story undeniable got smeared by time. The other scary version is the opposite. The truth is complicated, and more than one person had a hand in it, and the quiet isn't emptiness. It's pressure applied slowly until someone cracks. Either way, both paths end the same, with a knock on a door that changes someone's life. The question is how long it takes to get there. Days feel like months on the internet, but the people who will decide what's true don't work on a timeline built for trending pages. They work on one built for juries, and juries need more than vibes. There's a part of this that will never make sense no matter how clean the final report is. It's the part where a city kept moving while a parked car held a secret. It's the part where a family's fear was answered by a stranger's voice telling them to stop caring. It's the part where a crowd at a show turned into a backdrop for screenshots that may or may not be what people think they are. This is the bargain we make when we try to turn pain into a story we can understand. We grab what fits and leave what doesn't. But the pieces that don't fit are the ones that matter most. They're the ones investigators keep turning over in their hands. They're the ones that make deferred not a dodge, but a promise that whatever's written on the final line will earn its place there. Still, the mind looks for patterns. It can't help it. You start to think about the car sitting there and the tow and the dust, and you picture a person watching from a window, relieved each day it wasn't touched, nervous each time a meter made past. You think about hands that cleaned and hands that didn't, about a phone that pinged where it shouldn't have, about a message sent and unsent and drafted again. You think about a wig that's a little too similar, a crowd reaction that lands a little too hard, a lyric that reads differently now. None of that proves anything, and yet it shapes how you feel. And feelings, multiplied by millions of views, are the currency of modern outrage. They drive hashtags. They fill comment sections. They make people pick sides before the referee even steps onto the field. But this isn't a game. It's a family sitting in a quiet house, listening to a silence that used to be filled with a teenager's voice. It's a group of friends who will be older in a year and still carry this in their pockets. It's a city that followed a tow truck log to a conclusion no one wanted. And it's investigators who know that a single wrong step now could undo everything later. So they're not stepping wrong. They're stepping slow. They're pulling records that take departments weeks to release. They're sending swabs to labs that don't promise speed. They're chasing down people who moved states. People who remember half of what matters and none of what they think does. And while they do, the rest of us are left with a story that refuses to sit still. If you're waiting for a twist, maybe it's this. The most shocking thing might be that the truth, when it finally arrives, doesn't look like the theories. Maybe there's no mastermind and no grand cover. Maybe it's a string of small, selfish decisions that added up to a catastrophe. Or maybe there is a network, and the silence we're hearing is a net dropping, one name at a time, until the center has nowhere left to hide. Both possibilities live here, in this strange stretch between discovery and decision. That's why every official sentence is measured. Every interview is careful. Every no comment isn't just a wall, it's a guardrail. And yes, there are details that feel like more than bad timing. Sudden reposts that read like taunts, captions that hit nerves, signals that might be jokes to one person and knives to another. But intent is hard to prove. And in the courtroom where this ends, if it ends there, intent has to be shown, not guessed. That's why the digital trail matters more than the vibe does. That's why rides taken on a certain night matter more than a lyric dropped on a certain day. That's why the car's computer, the tower pings, the app logins, the dust patterns, the fabric fibers, the partial prints, the biological traces, why those will outlast every rumor and render the final verdict on what was theater and what was truth. By now, you might feel the same whiplash everyone else feels. Every piece that lands on your screen makes the picture sharper and blurrier at the same time. A clip says one thing, an eyewitness says another, an official document shrugs in the middle. That tension is the point. It's what keeps you watching, keeps you talking, keeps you flipping from certainty to doubt and back again. The internet is built to hold you right there between outrage and curiosity. But a real investigation isn't. It's built to end, to put ink on the last line, to stitch together a chain that can hold weight. And when that happens, when deferred gets replaced by an actual cause, when investigation ongoing becomes something else, you'll see the flurry of paperwork move like dominoes instead of bricks. Until then, here's the only conclusion that feels honest. The simplest page we have is the one with her name on it. A teenager gone. That's the page that matters, even as we debate all the rest. Everything else, the car, the clips, the tattoos, the whispers, the sudden changes in expression, the screenshots from Discord, the ticket on the windshield, the tone notice, the impound log. Those are supporting characters. They'll either line up into a clean path, or they won't. And if they don't, someone will try to make them loudly. Don't be that person. Hold the tension. Wait for the kind of answers that don't need comment sections to stand up. Because here's the quiet truth no one wants to hear. The end of this story might not feel like justice, even if it is. It might feel late. It might feel incomplete. It might reveal less than the internet promised and more than anyone wanted. But it will be the end the evidence allows. And in cases like this, that's the only end that can last. So remember the moment that started this chapter, a city form, a single word, deferred, and understand it the way the people in labs do. Not as a stall, as a promise, a statement that the last line will be written when it's real, not when it's loud. But that wasn't the whole story. The public thinks in headlines. Investigations think in sequences. The car sat because someone left it. Ticket stacked because policies are blind. The tow happened because the clock ran out. The discovery happened because procedure kicked in. After that, a different clock started, a quieter one. It ticks in sealed envelopes and courthouse stamps, in server rooms and forensic benches. You won't hear it. You're not supposed to. You'll only hear the sound it makes when it stops, when the knock lands on the right door. And what happens next will shock everyone, not because it's dramatic, but because it's final.